What's up guys, my name is Ace, and after quite a long time of silence, yesterday we finally got the blog post that we've been anticipating for quite some time for Modern Warfare 2, Warzone 2, and DMZ. So today we're going to be going through the details of this for everything aside from Warzone, because I don't play Warzone at all. I don't even know what's going on the Warzone side of things. And then I wanted to share my thoughts on this as well. And diving right into it, I just wanted to point out this is mainly just outlining changes that are coming to the game. For the actual content to expect for Season 2, we won't start hearing about that until next week, it looks like. But the first thing to mention here is it looks like there's going to be some more improvements coming for crashes and general gaming stability, so that's good to see. Also for audio, looks like they've been doing a lot of work on the back end for that. First up, it looks like for some PC players, they've been experiencing audio issues due to discrepancies in the number of channels they're outputting. And they're going to be adding an option to force PC into stereo output, which would effectively just be a workaround for that. Additionally, they talked a bit about their new occlusion system and why it wasn't working properly. Apparently with this brand new audio system that they were working on for this game, which has been disabled for, I think, since launch basically, or at least they tried turning it on a couple times and it was broken every time. With this, apparently they've worked out exactly what was causing that issue, and they will be re-enabling this with Season 2, which for audio fidelity, this sounds great. I'm just a little bit nervous to see what the footsteps and stuff are going to sound like after this update. The last time they re-enabled this system, it was like having a free wall hack because the footsteps were so loud and clear through solid walls that I could easily pinpoint the exact location of any moving enemy as long as they were within like a 30-meter radius of me, which is ridiculous and really significantly slows the pacing of the game down. So on the one hand, I'm looking forward to more accurate audio, but on the other hand, I'm just worried that this is not going to be balanced properly. But I guess time will tell. We'll just have to wait for the update to see. After that, there's a pretty big section on the user interface, and we'll just sort of blast through that. They're improving navigation and organization of the camo menu, a more polished social tab, including improved channel swapping and player muting, a new My Bundles screen, the ability to quick equip items from the Battle Pass, My Bundles, and the store, reticle previews in store and Gunsmith, even though we don't have access to custom reticles, but maybe this is sort of laying the groundwork for that in the future, or maybe it's just to sell more bundles. Also, improved clarity of attachment blocking logic in Gunsmith, and many more bug fixes with the user interface. It looks like with the UI, they're also going to be fixing the recent players menu. That hasn't been working, I think, for over a month now at this point. And also a status refresh for friends that's going to be working a little bit more efficiently now. And when it comes to all these, it's nice to see some improvements here. Doesn't look like it's going to be a full-on overhaul to the UI like many of us would like to see, but at least it looks like some steps in the right direction here. Now, on top of that, something that I've been really wanting to see since launch, and it really honestly should have been there at launch because it has been for every other Call of Duty game that's ever launched. It looks like we're going to be seeing an improved after-action report with audio. I don't really care about the audio part. I'm more interested to see what this after-action report looks like. I'm hoping it shows a breakdown of the XP as well as any challenges and unlocks that you've earned throughout that match that you just played, because currently all it is the post-match scoreboard, and that's it. And it looks like there's also going to be a lot of bug fixes for inconsistencies with challenges, battle pass, and weapon progression. Next up, they have a brief section on weapon balance, and basically they just said there will be some weapon balancing coming with the Season 2 update, but they're going to be outlining that in a future blog post. And now let's skip right ahead to the DMZ section here. The first thing they mentioned is they will be tuning the AI difficulty level a little bit, which is nice to see. So they're going to adjust the types of AI that are spawning in, the number of AI that are spawning in, as well as the accuracy at range for the AI players. And it looks like in general, they're aiming to make it a little bit less challenging, a little bit easier, or at the very least, a bit more consistent to be fighting against those bots, because I do find they can be really inconsistent in DMZ. Sometimes the bots are just completely clueless and they'll just stand there doing nothing, or they'll spray a bunch of bullets in your general direction but won't actually hit you. And then other times out of nowhere, it seems like they just like instantly lock onto your head and laser you, and there's no chance to even react to them. So I'd just like to see a bit more consistency there. Additionally, they're going to be adjusting the initial spawn points in DMZ as well, like for actual players. And it looks like they're also going to be tuning the mission difficulty. Apparently, the current state of the missions for DMZ are just too challenging for most players, so they are going to be scaling that back a little bit and just making it easier overall. They're also going to be working on improving crashes for DMZ. There is going to be a seasonal refresh, which will reset all of your faction mission progress as well as inventory, so your contraband and keys, which shouldn't be too surprising. This is what you would tend to see with these extraction style games. And now let's finally move into the multiplayer side of things with this update. The first thing they mention here once again is audio. Apparently they have been going back and forth with the old audio occlusion system and the new audio occlusion system, but for the past 2 months or so we've had the old occlusion system in place. And like I said, they're going to be re-implementing the new occlusion system, hopefully while not breaking footstep audio balance. Next, we have a section on perk balancing, and this is quite interesting. I do want to read this one out. They said, "We've heard a lot of feedback around the timing of the bonus perks, specifically the Ghost perk. We looked at swapping this perk's position, but we feel this would create severe imbalance in the perk system. For Season 2, we've updated the rate at which bonus and ultimate perks are earned. They're going to be reducing the bonus perk cost by 50% and the ultimate by 25%. And they say this adjustment will allow players to get Ghost earlier in matches, which will better support players looking to engage more aggressively." And with this one, I want to say I appreciate the explanation at least. I like that they're at least explaining some of their decision making with this, but I think it just goes to show how fundamentally flawed this perk system is and how they've effectively backed themselves into a corner with the system. And without a full-on overhaul, they're right. There isn't really that much they can do within the current system in order to balance things like Ghost properly. It's like they're finally starting to recognize the issues with the perk system, but now they don't know how to fix it, so they're just going to cut down the timer, which I also find funny because this is feedback that they got in the beta, and from the first weekend to the second weekend, they made a significant adjustment by massively reducing the timer for earning your perks. And it seemed like that was generally quite well received with the community, but then when the game launched, they reverted it almost back to the week 1 times from the beta. Not all the way, but almost at that point. And it just seems like they lost all that progress, and now finally we're starting to progress back toward the weekend 2 values that people already preferred. And when it comes to this perk system, it seems like the lower they make those charge times, the better the system gets. And once you get to the certain point, you have to ask yourself, what's the point of even having this charge time at all? And wouldn't the perk system just be better without it? Wouldn't it be a whole lot easier to balance things like the Ghost perk if you just drop the charge system and then balance the tiers of perks properly so there's proper trade-offs between the perks and you can stack perks that should be competing against each other rather than trying to force them into a tier based on the timing of the perk and not the inherent power of the perk? If the rumors are true and this really is going to be a 2-year Call of Duty, I really feel at some point we are just going to need to see a full-on perk overhaul because we're already seeing the flaws with this system and how limiting it can be when it comes to balancing perks properly. In either case, that's what we can expect to see with the perks for Season 2. Not a big overhaul or anything, but we should at least be able to charge up our perks faster. Which, again, this is a nice step forward at least, but it doesn't necessarily solve the issue. It's just going to alleviate it a little bit. As for the next thing on their list in the patch notes here, hardcore game modes are coming back, and it looks like they're going to be replacing Tier 1. So Tier 1 is being cut from the game. Hardcore is coming in to take its place. This is how the game should have launched to begin with. It was obvious with Modern Warfare 2019 that hardcore was far more popular than the realism mode, and yet they cut hardcore from this game and implemented Tier 1, which was much more along the lines of realism, the less popular mode. And if I had to guess, their player numbers have not been doing too great there, so they're learning from their mistake and re-implementing hardcore instead of Tier 1, which I think many hardcore fans will be happy with. But at the end of the day, I feel like this never should have been a problem to begin with, and hardcore should have been there at launch, just like it's always been in Call of Duty. As for the next thing in the patch notes here, this is the playlist section. They mentioned they are going to be bringing Valentine's Day playlists. They're going to be detailing the multiplayer modes coming with Season 2 in the coming weeks, so no details revealed for that in this blog post. And then finally, and most importantly here, they mentioned that 1 week per month, Infinity Ward will be creating a Twitter poll for fans to vote on one of that week's playlists from a rotating pool. And I do think that's a neat idea. I do like the idea of having that. They did this with Shoot the Ship this past week. And this is the type of thing that makes it feel a bit more like an actual community, which is something it seems like they've been trying to eliminate over the years with Call of Duty. This is something that brings that back at least to some degree. And while it is a fairly minor thing, I am on board with this. I think it is a nice little step in the right direction. And then finally, for these patch notes, they just reiterated the fact that ranked play is coming in Season 2, but we don't have any details on that yet, and they will be coming prior to Season 2. And with that, that wraps it up for the details of this blog post. Now I wanted to share more of my general thoughts on what we're seeing here with the blog post for Season 2. And I do want to start this off with at least a little bit of positivity. The one big thing that I liked about this blog post is the level of detail that they went into with each of the points that they mentioned. Instead of just getting really basic, vague bullet points, I like the fact that they actually explained some of their decision making, or they explained what was broken and what was causing issues, like in the case with the audio. I really like that level of communication, and I would love to see that continue going forward. But now let's talk a little bit more about my general thoughts on this, and unfortunately, it's fairly negative. As a person that has no interest in the free-to-play mode that's attached to this game, which is Warzone, this was a very disappointing blog post, especially with how long we've gone since a meaningful update. By the time this Season 2 update hits, that's a full 2-month gap of nothing really big or meaningful. Sure, there's been some minor like bug fixes, stability issues, stuff like that, but nothing that fixes any gameplay related issues or fixes any balancing issues or anything, or even just freshens up the gameplay a little bit. And that's frustrating considering the current times where games are supposed to be treated more as a service. This game launched with a lot less multiplayer content than we would normally expect, and that could be fine if it were treated as a service and we got updates every couple of weeks or so, but this is a full 2-month gap, and that gap is much more along the lines of the really early days of Call of Duty where we at least got the full game to begin with when the game launched. And with this really large gap of nothing going on, I was really hoping for a whole lot more than what we were seeing in this blog post. Now, to be fair, at this point, we don't have a full outline of the content that we can expect to see for Season 2. They did mention we'll be seeing 5 weapons added to the game, which is nice and interesting, but not nearly as engaging as map content for multiplayer, so we don't know how many maps we're going to be getting or any other information as far as what to expect content-wise for the season. But after such a long period of nothing going on, I was definitely hoping for a whole lot more than what we saw in this blog post. When reading through this, as somebody that doesn't play Warzone at least, this looks much more like a minor update, not a major, heavily anticipated update because it's been silent for so long. And while some of these changes are welcome changes, and I'd say there are some nice baby steps in the right direction here, this doesn't feel like the type of update that you would expect after a 2-month gap with nothing going on. So that's where I'm at with this right now. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what kind of content we're getting for the season. I'm really hoping it's more than just one multiplayer map with the launch of the season and then one with the mid-season. At the absolute bare minimum, I'm hoping we get 2 regular multiplayer maps at launch and 1 to 2 maps in the mid-season as well. But unfortunately, I'm not really feeling particularly optimistic, so I hope they prove me wrong here, but I'm definitely preparing myself for disappointment. Now, of course, these are all just my thoughts on this blog post and the situation currently with the game, and I'd love to hear what you guys think in the comment section down below. Are you guys generally happy with what you're seeing in this blog post? Do you feel like it's enough? Do you feel like there should be more? Just let me know all of those thoughts down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.